The Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste was a boat that left from New York City on November 7, 1872. On board the ship was Benjamin Spooner Briggs, the captain, as well as his wife and their 2-year-old daughter. There were 7 men on the crew with them, and their plan was to sail across the Atlantic to Italy. The ship's cargo had about 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. What happened next has led to a mystery that spanned over 150 years. A British ship, Dei Gratia, saw the Mary Celeste drifting aimlessly in the Atlantic. The Mary Celeste was found about 400 miles off the coast of the Azores, an island chain near Portugal. The crew of the Dei Gratia was shocked to see the ship. It had taken off just 8 days before the Dei Gratia set sail. They were curious, so they decided to board the Mary Celeste. When they got on the ship, they were dumbfounded. Not one person was on the Mary Celeste, and the lifeboat was gone. Also, the ship still had around 6 months' worth of food and water, which was plenty for the planned voyage. The cargo was also untouched. The boat had a flooding issue where 3 or so feet of water was on the ship's floor. That was not exactly a dire situation, and the crew could have repaired the responsible leak to stop the water coming inside. The Dei Gratia crew saw that the last log entry by Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs for the ship was made on November 25th. They decided to bring the ship over to Gibraltar, a British territory in Spain at the entrance of the Mediterranean Sea. The Mary Celeste was sent to be examined by the British Vice Admiralty Court. The reason they brought the boat to Gibraltar was to salvage it. By doing so, the crew was entitled to the insurance money claimed on the Mary Celeste. At the time, the insurance payout was roughly $46,000. Since the amount was so high, the British officers in Gibraltar were suspicious of the crew. Were they trying to pull a scam? Did they do something sinister to Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs, his family, and the crew of the Mary Celeste? A 3-month investigation led to no solid evidence of foul play. The insurance company still decided not to pay the full $46,000 to the crew of the Dei Gratia, just a smaller fraction. During the early 2000s, Anne McGregor and an oceanographer named Phil Richardson decided to investigate the fate of the Mary Celeste. Anne was driven by what she thought was nonsense that had been written about the Mary. So she decided to go out and find the truth for herself. What she found was fascinating and baffling. She found no evidence of a mutiny or even a pirate attack. If there was a mutiny, then the ship would have been in much worse condition. The vessel was by no means in danger from the flooding either. The captain and crew were experienced, and abandoning ship was the last thing they would have done in the Atlantic unless absolutely necessary. McGregor and Richardson's research led them to believe there were some equipment issues with the Mary. First, it's believed that the chronometer, a piece of equipment for navigation, was faulty and put them 120 miles west in the wrong direction. The flooding in the ship was more than likely caused by a few faulty ship pumps. They were found disassembled on the Mary, leading McGregor and Richardson to believe that Benjamin Spooner Briggs was worried about the flooding and wasn't sure if it would get progressively worse. Despite all of this coming out, the truth about what really happened on the Mary Celeste remains a mystery. Benjamin Spooner Briggs, his wife, his daughter, and the crew were never found. The North Korean ghost ships. A truly strange situation happened on the western coast of Japan during the late 2010s. Fishing vessels were found in the Sea of Japan by the Coast Guard. These ships were believed to be fishing boats from North Korea because of their unique markings. What was discovered on board the vessel shocked the Coast Guard. Human remains were nestled inside the boats. The crew died under mysterious circumstances, and their bodies were in an advanced stage of decomposition. The Japanese Coast Guard knew that North Korean fishing vessels often went out to catch squid and king crab. Sadly, North Korean boats are not equipped with proper equipment like GPS navigation systems or even reliable motors in case of emergencies. Another frustration for the Japanese is that North Korea refuses to send out any information about ships that have gone missing from their country. Those that go out are lost and never reported, which is heartbreaking for the families of the missing fishermen. Why were so many vessels being found with dread crews on board? One prevailing theory is that North Korea's sanctions from their nuclear program have caused a massive food shortage. Fishermen are forced to sail out further than usual and get larger hauls to ease the shortage. Another issue is that North Korea's need for cash led them to sell fishing rights off their coast to China. This means that Chinese boats are in competition with North Korean fishermen. Also, North Korea's government has allowed fishermen in their country to keep any surplus. These incentives have made desperate people make highly dangerous decisions. With food being short and equipment being less up to date, these fishermen are in over their heads. A lack of supplies and exposure are more than likely responsible for their deaths. In recent years, the Japanese have discovered North Korean vessels with fishermen still alive on board. However, the North Koreans are quickly sent back to their country. What's your favorite story about ghost ships? Let us know in the comments and be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell for updates. The Octavius. It was mid to late 1775 when the captain of the Herald, a whaling ship, spotted a mysterious ship drifting alone somewhere off the coast of Greenland. The mystery vessel was the Octavius. It had been about 14 years since anyone had seen it. The rumor was that the Octavius had sailed from England to China. The captain of the ship allegedly made plans to find the famous Northwest Passage, a northern water route that linked the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. The crew of the Herald decided to board the Octavius after spotting it. When they got on board, they were horrified by what they found. As they made their way down into the lower decks, they discovered the Octavius's 28-man crew. They were all dead. But they weren't just dead. Their bodies had frozen to death. Perhaps the creepiest discovery on the ship was the captain in his quarters. He was rumored to have been found sitting at his desk with a pen still in hand. The ship's logbook was in front of him. He too had frozen to death. When the Herald's crew looked around, they noticed an icy woman holding a young child. The horror was too much for the crew to thoroughly process. So, someone from the Herald grabbed the logbook as evidence and they got back on their boat as fast as possible. Sadly, pages from the logbook of the Octavius were lost, and the crew only had a few pages left as evidence of their discovery. When the log was reviewed, it was uncovered that the Octavius sailed north from China to Barrow, Alaska. Somehow, the vessel navigated the Arctic and made its way to Greenland. The Herald returned home not long after and shared their tale. The Octavius was not seen by anyone else afterwards. It's said that the last entry in the logbook for the Octavius read, 11th November 1762. We've now been enclosed in the ice 70 days. The fire went out yesterday, and our master has been trying ever since to kindle it again without success. His wife died yesterday. There is not relief. Bei-Chimo. The Bei-Chimo was a ship built in Sweden and launched in 1914. When it was constructed, it was named Angermanelfen, but was renamed Bei-Chimo around 1920 when it was purchased by the Hudson's Bay Company in Canada. This was a company that grew thanks to the fur trade and later in the retail industry. The Bei-Chimo was a ship that sailed at times to Scotland from Canada, but it also traveled throughout the Western Arctic. It would even deliver supplies to the Northwest Territories of Canada. During the winter, the ship docked in Vancouver. It was late 1931 when the Bei-Chimo was sailing from the Northwest Territories to Vancouver. The ship was caught in the middle of a horrible storm near Barrow, Alaska, and the crew decided to lay anchor to wait out the weather. They soon realized that they would have to spend the winter there and not Vancouver. The crew decided the ship was not a reasonable home to tough out the winter. Some of them left the ship and a few stayed on board. The crew left over had to make sure that ice didn't form around the rudder of the Bei-Chimo, so the ship could stay operational. November 1931 arrived, and another storm hit the area where the Bei-Chimo was anchored. The storm apparently sent the vessel adrift. Meanwhile, the captain and crew thought the ship had sunk. They later received news that the Bei-Chimo was spotted about 44 miles south of their location. It was stuck in ice, so they made their way over. It was cleared of its cargo, and the crew decided the Bei-Chimo would simply have to be stuck for the time being. But the boat had a different plan. It pulled the most amazing disappearing act. The captain and crew made it to Vancouver in 1932. They were ready to finish some paperwork about the ship when they learned that it was spotted 300 miles to the east of Barrow, Alaska. From 1933 until 1962, the Bei-Chimo was seen by multiple vessels. During this time, it was also boarded several times between 1933 and 1939. The ship was spotted again in 1962 by the Inuit in the Beaufort Sea. Finally, in 1969, the Bei-Chimo was seen frozen in an ice pack. That was the last time it was seen by someone. So, what was the final fate of the Bei-Chimo? Well, it more than likely sunk and has yet to be discovered. Orang Medan. The story of the Orang Medan popped up in newspapers across the United States during the 1940s. Orang Medan comes from the Malay language and means man of Medan. There's a saying in the world of ship naming that naming a ship after a man is considered extremely bad luck. The Orang Medan may have tempted fate since it and its crew met an untimely demise. Some believe its story is true, while others claim it's simply a ghost story. We'll let you decide for yourself. Sometime during the 1940s, an Italian ship was sailing 400 miles southeast of the Marshall Islands when it picked up an SOS message from a boat called the Orang Medan. The message was, "We are floating. Second officer dead on bridge. Captain and chief engineer dead in chart room. Probably whole crew dead. Partly." The ship's last known position was also given. The Italian crew soon discovered that the Orang Medan was a ship used to transport Chinese troops. They tried to find it, but had no luck. The next day, they finally spotted the Medan about 50 miles from where the ship claimed to be. The Italian ship called out, but there was no response, so a few crew members decided to board the mysterious vessel. The Italian boarding crew was met with nothing but death. There were bodies everywhere, and they all had one thing in common. All those who were dead had horrific expressions on their faces. It was as if they experienced the ultimate horror seconds before their end. But what did they see? The Italians visited the wireless room next to where the operator was found dead. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew on board the Italian ship noticed something strange on the Orang Medan. Smoke was coming out of it. They called a warning out to the boarding party. The men then scrambled to escape the Orang Medan. They jumped into their boats right before an explosion set off on the Medan. 3 more explosions followed, and the ship sank as the Italians watched in horror. All that survived was their story. Sam Ratulangi, PB 1600. It was late 2018 when the Sam Ratulangi PB 1600, a large container ship, was discovered 7 miles off the coast of Myanmar, near the port town of Yangon. The Myanmar Navy decided to investigate. The Sam Ratulangi PB 1600 was in poor shape for a ship only built in 2001. It was pretty much a rusty old bucket. Strangely enough, there was no cargo or crew on board. The Sam Ratulangi PB 1600 was last reported near Taiwan about 9 years earlier. Because of this, the Myanmar Navy had a real mystery on their hands with what seemed to be a real-life ghost ship. Myanmar Navy officials learned that a tugboat was supposed to be bringing the Sam Ratulangi PB 1600 to a shipbreaking factory in Chittagong, Bangladesh. The business there involved dismantling ships for scrap. It's controversial due to the unsafe labor conditions seen in Bangladesh. But if someone is willing to risk their life in an unsafe business, they can potentially make a boatload of money. Literally, there were cables found in the head of the vessel, which led them to believe the ship was headed somewhere toward the tugboat. But where was it? Did the tugboat meet a similar fate? Were pirates involved? Did it sink during a storm? The tugboat, named the Independence, was later found along with its crew from Indonesia. The crew admitted to Myanmar Navy officials that they were pulling the Sam Ratulangi PB 1600, but it broke free during a storm. With that, the mystery was finally solved. Do you know of any more mysteries you'd like us to cover? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.